Ladies and gentlemen, it's time. Sortof versus Hyun. Sortof is up one game. Let's throw it over to the casters.
Thank you so much, Clutch. Once again, guys, this is game number 2 between Sortof and Hyun. Sortof is up 1-0, and it seems that Hyun has picked game number 2 on Cloud Kingdom. Let's jump straight into the game. Over here in the bottom left corner, we have from Team Western Wolves, currently up 1-0. He is the underdog, but he's playing brilliantly. It is Western Wolves, Sortof.
And in the top right-hand corner, the runner-up to GSL Code S, it is TSL Hyun.
And Hyun is going to open this time with a spawning pool first, very similar to what Sortof is doing, and well, Sortof does pretty much every game. And that game number 1 is great confidence for Sortof, but it's no indication of how the series will end up. We've seen people take first games to Muslim and Golden and then end up losing it. So Sortof still has to remain on the tippy top of his toes, Andre, as the saying goes.
If I have to look at that game last time, I really feel like Hyun was a little bit overconfident with how far ahead he was. He was thinking, okay, I'm doing all this damage, I have mutas out, my opponent is reacting with infestors, which is purely defensive. You cannot really go aggressive infestors on a map like Daybreak where it's so ridiculously far away. So he's like, okay, I'm just gonna end it here. It goes terribly wrong, and then right off the bat, Sortof is able to capitalize off that. With just a pack of roaches, he punishes his opponent for just over-droning. This game, I don't think we'll see that type of Hyun. He's gonna play a lot more standard, a lot safer style, knowing that his opponent is capable of just bouncing back and instantly making the right decision.
Yeah, and you know, he recognized that Sortof was gonna go for a timing, so he tried to squeeze out as much roaches as possible, but he just didn't really have enough. You know, he had Zerglings and Mutas and some roaches that were on 0-0 against +2 Roach Hydra that was virtually maxed, and infestors. So it's not like that Hyun had a lot of defensive capability. That kind of army composition, you want to avoid hitting, countering your opponent, and you want to do run-bys. You want to be taking out drones at bases. You want to be burrowing and trying to avoid any kind of direct confrontation. Great play from Sortof, but now it's a new game, and Hyun does have the map choice. Cloud Kingdom is a map that's good for that kind of style. You know, you can run your roaches to a different corner of the map and really annoy your opponent, and if he's not careful, you can do a lot of damage.
Well, let's be honest, Cloud Kingdom plays out completely different than a map like Daybreak. It's significantly shorter in distance. It's a lot easier to get to your opponent's base. On top of that, you have these ramps all over the place, which make Fungal just excessively strong. If you lock down a bunch of roaches...
That's what makes Fungal excessively strong, right, Andre?
Yes, that's the only thing. You know, if you lock down roaches right here, you have a great concave, and on top of that, you're going to kill a lot of those or do damage to a lot of those roaches. So it's hard to be the aggressor on this map, but we've seen it, of course, time and time again, as ZVZ is still very volatile in the styles that these players choose. Baneling Nest going up for Hyun yet again. Do we have one for Sortof? Yes, we do in the front.
Now, what's interesting is that Hyun puts his Baneling Nest at his main base. We see Zergs do it. They're natural to be more defensive, right? Force the Banelings into chokes and funnels. Allow the Queens and drones to have time to split and, you know, reduce the travel time, or sorry, increase the travel time the Banelings have to detonate. But Hyun's hiding it. So I'm curious to see if he's actually going to turn on the aggression. We've seen players likely not pretend they're going to set up defensively and all of a sudden switch and then make 8 Banelings and just go straight for your middle line and do massive amount of damage. You can't necessarily predict 100% what a player is going to do in this matchup, and players likely not prove that.
Well, you know, I prefer the Baneling Nest in the main rather than the natural, because it sets you up in later game stages where you can not go the Baneling Nest at all and really try to put pressure on your opponent with just mass Zerglings. Maybe get a faster lair that way and take advantage of your opponent. If you see in a long series, a best of 5 even, that my opponent never does Zergling Baneling aggression, there's no need to get the Baneling Nest anymore, so I can really afford something of more value. Maybe even a Roach Warren and try to get roaches out as fast as possible. So that, I just like it for the mind games in best of 5 or best of 7s. But at this point, we'll see if Hyun really utilizes that for the rest of this series. You can see both these players are scouting each other out pretty nicely. Sortof getting in here and seeing the evolution chamber being placed, but I don't know if he saw the Roach Warren.
I don't think so either. No, he did not. That will allow Hyun, it'll scare Hyun sort of to be a little bit more defensive. Like, what can he do? You know, what options does he have? When realistically, they're both doing the same exact thing. Quick Infestor Tech after a Roach Warren while being able to get a +1 and just generally solidify their upgrades for the mid game. Now, Hyun is taking a much quicker third base than his opponent, and that's gonna be a little bit. Actually, it's not even that much faster as Sortof was able to get it up. But, you know, these kinds of small differences aren't going to be too drastic because, again, Cloud Kingdom, a big choke map. You know, it's a lot of narrow ramps and areas where Fungal can lock things down. So just because you're down by a few roaches doesn't necessarily mean you have a decisive advantage.
That's right. A lot of volatility in this early game stage before Infestors, but as soon as they pop out, it's like, okay, let's take our bases and just chill out. No need to be aggressive because, as we were talking about, Infestors just so powerful at that mid-game stage. Hyun being a little bit more aggressive, you can see, with just Zergling, Baneling. Very interesting. You know, this is his style. You're macroing, and you have a macro mindset, but you're always prodding and poking and seeing if you can do any damage. And on top of that, you get a feel of the composition and what your opponent is capable of.
Trades here and there, but in the end, Hyun loses all of his Banelings, not able to finish off any of these roaches. Sort of taking the long way home. Or actually, sorry, he's moving out towards the top of the map. I guess he's going to try to pressure this third base. But, you know, Hyun has seen this, and he's going to try to defend his own way.
Let's go ahead and look at the count. 16 roaches out in the field so far for Sortof. None for Hyun. Hyun has really favored this greedy style where he focuses more on drones.
He's been really greedy.
Drones and Zerglings, really. And these roaches, wow, they're going to catch him completely off guard.
Yeah, and the Infestors aren't even out for Hyun to even control, so Hyun's been playing this extremely greedy, just like you said, Andre, and a lot of drones will drop. The Roaches shouldn't be able to kill the third because reinforcements are coming for Hyun, but, you know, sort of taking a nice little pressure point here.
Yeah, no matter what, this has done a pretty substantial amount of damage. You're still limiting the Infestor count, forcing a couple Fungals out, but more importantly, just really stopping that Infestor count from growing. And now Sortof can kind of back up from here, say, okay, well, you killed a lot of my stuff, but I'm droning this whole time. I'm injecting the whole time pretty seamlessly. And on top of that, I can commit all of my gas towards Infestors where you have to make some roaches to compensate.
Well, in the end, you know, it's kind of funny because Hyun still kept his Infestors alive. You know, sort of try to dance around, snipe one here and there, but in the end, Hyun's the one that's ahead, and that's going to be really nice because we're hitting a point in DBZ where it's just, oh my goodness, it's so hard to attack into your opponent because of the ramps that lead up to the third base. And then the center of attention becomes the fourth base. Can you burrow Infestors, drop Infested Terrans? We saw that again in Game 7 on this map between Hyun and Sniper in the GSL. Lots of possibilities, but in the end, massive attacks are really tough until you get like a huge intimidating army until like the 170, 180 supply mark.
And both these players are thinking the same thing. Just get defensive Infestors. If you want to be aggressive, you're going to have a lot more roaches than Infestors. I'll have the Infestor advantage and then just fungal you down to death. But of course, when both of them do this style, the greedier person is going to irk out ever so slightly, and the greedier person this time around is Sortof, who's taking the fourth base super fast, and I love this decision. I mean, it's 300 minerals. Minerals are important, don't get me wrong, but they're not nearly as important as gas because of those the Infestors. So just throw that down. If there's a push coming, you cancel it. Okay, I get a return on money. Even if it finishes, you're still looking pretty good because you're just feeling everything out. You know you can defend with the current map, with the current positions, and everything's fine. It's theoretically correct.
Yeah, and well, we see that Hyun is not necessarily that high in supply because he's been trying to spend a lot of his resources in this tech, you know, getting things like burrow and overlord movement speed. While we see that Sortof is choosing to funnel most of his gas into earlier Hydras, which is becoming more and more standard. You know, they realize if we protect the Hydras, well, hypothetically, our army is just better because you can output more damage, and whoever can push the other person away from their center of attention, like if it's a base or or other forms of tech, then you can get a large momentum swing, and from there, ZVZ just becomes, well, very momentum-based.
Yeah, not only that, Hydras, I feel like give you the chance to be a little bit more aggressive. You know, Infestors need a lot of time, so if you're including more Infestors, more and more Infestors need energy. And look at this, Zergling's going into the main base. This is going to clear up a little bit of room, potentially at that fourth base for an attack with those Hydras and Infestors. Wow, Hyun is losing a ton of drones at the main base. Nicely done by Sortof.
Yeah, sort of able to just harass a little bit, but in the end, he's just building a strong composition. He has 12 Hydras, adding on 6 more, and again, that's just going to be really nice to complement his +2 upgrades. And I feel like if Hyun allows Sortof to get a similar position where he attacks 3 prongs, how is he going to ever hold that massive timing?
I'm not sure. The Hydra count is getting pretty alarmingly high for Sortof. I love this style of getting super fast Hydras and really just putting on the pressure, making it so that you kind of give yourself options to attack and give yourself options to trade out units more efficiently and get the better army composition. Here we go, splitting up, going down the ramp, and couple infestors on the top. Wow, this is a huge fight.
Big fight, concave all across, and we see that Hyun does have a lot of infested Terrans coming up, but so does Sortof, and the Hydras are pretty well protected, and that's going to come into play, but Sortof does lose on one front, but Hyun at the same time, it's not like he can really hold off. The Roaches are flanking the infestors, trying to snipe as many as they can, but the Hydras from Sortof are able to pick up almost everything because they're so well protected, and Hyun lost his battle so convincingly while being able to protect some of his infestors.
The power of Hydras, that's what it is. The infested Terrans are blocking everything, enough time for enough infested Terrans to just be pushed out, and the Hydras are safe completely. The Roaches are trying to kill those eggs, but as soon as they hatch, they regain full hit points. Everything's beautiful. For Sortof, again, denying the 4th base. He has a 4th base for himself. He's way ahead.
Yeah, and now he doesn't necessarily have to attack. He can just retool, and he's going to have that large advantage he had in game number 1, a bank. And he's able to not only confront and engage and destroy the army, but able to remake, and Hyun can't keep up. And, you know, Hyun, he's not even maxed, and Sortof is, and now the process begins where Hyun tries to keep up, but how is he going to take tempo away from his opponent?
I have no clue. I mean, Hyun really needs to do some guerrilla warfare. If he wants to get back into this game, go ahead, go behind, attack the 3rd, attack the 4th, even try to slip into the natural like Hyun has been doing all game. But at this point, if he tries to go head-to-head every single time, he's going to lose. He doesn't have enough infestors to really compensate for the positional, or excuse me, the unit advantage that Hyun, that Sortof has, and the composition that Sortof has. So a very, very difficult position for Hyun. How is he going to accomplish this?
He's going to try to pull away some of the units. That way he can't really set up the good concave. This is an excellent attack thus far for Sortof, as he does have just an overwhelming advantage, but the forces in the top do get cleaned up. Hyun trying to rush back into the scene for his Hydras to add in some damage. Hyun doesn't have any more infestor energy, so he's going to have to back off for now. Soda's the same case for Sortof. Meanwhile, Roaches are attacking at the 4th base, and that's going to give Hyun a small window if he can snipe some of these drones and climb back, but still, regardless, it's tough because Hyun is down an entire base and 2 geysers.
Oh, look at this. Hyun making a Zergling wall with some changelings. Really, really nicely done. Stopping those Roaches and Hydras from getting away. And remember, those Hydras are super slow on creep, so that was super effective. Now defending at the 4th base. If Hyun is able to break this, that's a big, big win in his book. But there's a ton of Hydras here and a great concave.
Well, all the units are jumping up on the ramp. Not all the Hydras are shooting, while Sortof has an incredible amount of Hydras just going at it. Hyun trying to break through. This is his opportunity to come back into the game, but he's not able to break it. Sortof does hold.
The Hydra army is just fantastic. Frodan, he's able to keep his Hydras alive so well. Normally, you see the Roaches pushing up super, super fast, trying to take out those Hydras, which have most of the DPS. But Sortof, every single time, is protecting them with those infested Terrans, just making sure that they're backing up, not taking full damage from his opponent's infested Terrans, making sure there's space between those Roaches and Hydras, slowly kiting back when he needs to. And now he's refueled, 186, 192 now to Hyun's 187. Unit tab is showing 20 Hydras to 7. Any engagement at this point, I think, is going to be really good, since Hyun just wasted most of his mana in that last attack.
Hyun sends some Roaches to the bottom right. I did have a conversation with him asking him, did he know about the bottom right base? Actually, all I thought, Hyun is going to be forced upon the engagement right here in the middle of the map. And Sortof, he does have a larger standing army with Hydras,
there's
as
too many.
Hyun doesn't have everything with him.
Beautifully done by Sortof. He's going to push into the 4th yet again and deny this. Sortof has a vice grip on his opponent. Who would have thought? The Swedish powerhouse really powering through and taking game number 2, it looks like.
And Sortof just going to push into the ramp. It doesn't matter. It might be a bad concave. It doesn't matter if it's a bad position. He's just got so much more than Hyun, and he's able to keep the units coming on as Hyun can't really keep up in the raw production. And the ramp has been compromised, so the infestors are left alone. And he's going to try to take out all of these casters.
Beautifully done. Now the drone's being pulled. That's almost dancing with the Hydras.
Sortof says, get out of the game. You're not even in this anymore. Hyun pulling his drones, and Hyun tried to engage with just roaches, but more reinforcements are coming in. Hyun dropping infested Terrans, but that's not going to be able to hold up the onslaught as Sortof in prime position to snipe this third base, and he's dancing more units again. Saying, Hyun, what are you still doing here, man?
There is a couple of counterattacks going on at the third and the fourth base. You can see Roaches just trying to do a little bit of damage to these drones, but it's not going to be enough. The third base is still mining. It looks like infestors are still out, so Hyun says, I still have a chance in this, but it's 160 supplied to 100, now 127, but still, that's a massive advantage in ZVZ, and when you look at the base count, you can't but help say, it's all over for Hyun in game number 2.
I was watching, actually, so one of the people were watching Sortof practice against Polt earlier today while they were getting ready for their matches. As you do see a couple roaches trying to run by in desperation for Hyun. And they were saying Polt was having difficulty keeping up with Sortof even in their practice games, and they're on the different side of the bracket. So, you know, if Sortof keeps up this kind of play, this guy can go super far. He doesn't even look. If you took away the names, I couldn't even tell you that it was Sortof. I couldn't even tell it was a European. I would tell you it's a Korean Zerg.
Sortof's playing really well. It's an incredible timing attack that he has with mass Hydras, and then his infestors have the perfect amount of energy to just spew out as many infested Terrans as possible. I love this style coming out of Sortof. It's just so very powerful, and he's catching Hyun off guard both games now.
Well, Hyun trying to go for one last engagement. This is his last strand of hope. But Sortof just has so many units, and I can't see a way in heaven or in hell that Hyun's able to win this battle, as there's so many red units on the map and not enough blue. Hyun's supply is dipping at critical levels, now down to just 83, as he only can make 3 roaches at a time. That is not enough. He wants to keep up. Sortof about to break through the natural ramp, and that is it. GG!
Outstanding, Frodan. I have to say, that is such a cool build. I really haven't seen that used so deliberately, but what he does, he gets his infestors pretty fast, and then he goes like a really nice early Hydra timing.
You know, Andre, we could always talk a lot about this, but let's hear what Zoe and Dana have to say about game numbers 1 and 2.
Thank you very much, guys. That was sort of amazing. I sort of didn't expect that outcome. Come on! He was asking for that whilst giving himself such a name. Yeah, a little bit of applause for that very witty word game I just did. Thank you very much.
Well played. English is not even her native language.
Yeah, see, and I still pull it off. No, but I'm actually sort of... Okay, I'm stopping now. Sorry, I couldn't help it. I did not expect any of these games to go that way. Hyun was definitely the favorite going into that match. And, I mean... Despite me coming from Europe and sort of being sort of a big deal over there, because people, okay, I'm not really stopping.
Yeah, sorry,
no, but like, we know him over there. You see, at least I make you laugh. I know he's not as well known here, but how did you expect that?
Well, the weird thing is that, especially from the way you see Hyun play in the rest of his Zerg vs. Zerg games, Hyun, even though he has these nice little aggressive moves, like, you know, in game 1 we saw the early Mutalisk Baneling push to try to kill off some of the infestors. Even though he has those little moves, most of his gameplay... Hello, Chance. Most of his gameplay does have a lot more of the tactical element to it. Trying to get in better engagements, trying to get better concaves. And it's weird to see that in virtually every single engagement, sort of had far the better concave. And also, often you'll look at a map and say, okay, is this more of an infestor map? How good are Ling counterattacks? What about Mutalisks? Rarely do you look at a map and say, how does the Hydralisk perform in this one? And weirdly, Cloud Kingdom especially works very nicely for the Hydralisk. It's not huge open spaces as you'd have in the center of a map like Entombed Valley, where you actually can get extremely nice angles on Roach versus Hydra. Almost always, you'd have a phenomenal angle. Good boy. So that was a really exceptional...
I know the people didn't actually see us, right? When you said
I wasn't on camera. I just said good boy in the middle of a sentence. There's a dog right here, and he's so sweet, aren't you, Chance? Weren't Sortof's concaves incredible? Yes. He doesn't speak English as well as Zoe. So the thing again that is most amazing to me is that your average Zerg bear goes for as many infestors as he can in the mid game, and around 150 food begins considering moving on to the Hydralisk. You're seeing again and again and again sort of getting just enough infestors, 5 or 6, and then going straight into mass Hydra production, and it's really unusual, really, really cool to see it perform so well.
It was indeed. I actually just listened to what you said because I was still laughing in my brain.
Well, it was brilliant.
I'm a big sucker for CVZ. It's literally my favorite matchup for just the games we saw there. And yeah, I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that, but I just really enjoy it. Hence, I really want to get the third game rolling. And I would say we are almost ready to go, and we'll show you the potential last game just after the commercial.